What happens when a U.S. Senator is pulled over in the dead of night and the officer refuses to believe who she is? In this powerful true-to-life story, Senator Kamala Harris faces a terrifying encounter on a quiet Louisiana highway that spirals into a national reckoning. A lone witness, a recording, and one act of courage ignite a movement far beyond that roadside stop. As the country watches, what unfolds next isn't just about justice. It's about who we choose to be when no one expects us to act. This isn't just a story. It's a call to something greater. The night was thick with silence, so complete that even the hum of insects seemed reverent. On a nearly deserted Louisiana backroad, the stars above blinked freely, untouched by city haze. Each sound, each tire crunch on the asphalt, felt sharper in the stillness. Kamala Harris, a poised and accomplished U.S. Senator, gripped the steering wheel of her navy blue sedan. Her almond-toned face was partially lit by the dashboard glow, her eyes trained ahead with quiet resolve. After 14 hours of tense committee hearings, phone calls, and negotiations, this drive was her exhale. She had opted for this winding shortcut home, the kind of road where pine trees whisper secrets and there are more crickets than street lamps. Despite the late hour, well past midnight, Kamala didn't speed. Her hand stayed at 10 and 2. The discipline ingrained by years in politics, where a single mistake could cost a reputation, guided every move. So when she noticed red and blue lights flashing in the rearview mirror, her first reaction wasn't guilt or panic. It was confusion. Her brow furrowed. She glanced at the speedometer. 63. No missed stop signs, no weaving, no burnt-out lights. Nothing. And yet the patrol car behind her didn't let up. Its siren shrieked once, sharp as a scalpel, cutting the silence. Kamala exhaled through her nose, signaled calmly, and pulled over with practiced grace. She'd worked with police departments before, on reform, on funding, on mutual respect. She believed in law and order. Still, an unfamiliar chill crept down her back. She kept both hands visible on the wheel, her breath steady, routine check, she told herself, a simple mistake. But as the squad car lingered with its high beams burning into her rear window, something shifted. Too long, too calculated. The driver's door of the cruiser finally swung open. Officer Daniel Kay stepped out, etched in stark contrast under the lights. He wasn't imposing in height, but he carried himself with forced dominance. There was a stiffness in his stride, a tension in the way his boots crunched on the gravel shoulder. His left hand hovered over his hip, just inches from his holstered gun, while his right lazily swept a flashlight back and forth. The beam sliced through the night like a warning. Kamala lowered her window slowly, ensuring her palms faced upward, resting openly on the steering wheel. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, measured, the same tone she'd used 1,000 times in Senate floor debates. "Good evening, officer." No reply. The flashlight paused on her face, too bright and too long. She squinted, but didn't flinch. He popped his gum slowly, mockingly, before speaking in a flat tone. "License, registration, no introduction, no explanation, just command." Kamala's jaw tightened, but she didn't let it show. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" Officer K's froze mid-chew, tilting his head slightly as if her question was insubordination. "License, registration," he repeated, voice clipped, jaw tight. Kamala Harris reached toward the glove box, not fast, not slow, just deliberate, every movement echoing the weight of her identity, her office, her lifetime of walking a tighter rope than most. This time the officer's words came slower, each one laced with the kind of authority that didn't come from confidence but from threat. Kamala swallowed the tightness in her throat. She'd encountered men like this before. Small in character, inflated by a badge, men who confused dominance with dignity. But tonight wasn't the time to challenge that. Not yet. "All right, officer," she said steadily, her voice measured like a metronome. "I'm reaching for my wallet. It's in the center console." Her right hand moved with exaggerated caution toward the dashboard, while her left stayed frozen on the steering wheel. No sudden moves, just steady breath and muscle memory from years of being cautious in places where she shouldn't have to be. She pulled out her wallet, flipped it open with grace, and presented her driver's license. Tucked next to it, deliberately so, was her U.S. Senate ID, edged in gold, the seal unmistakable even in the dim cabin light. She held it up, expecting at least a flicker of recognition, some sign that reason had entered the moment. But Officer Case barely looked. His eyes skimmed the ID, then landed back on her face with the same cold indifference. His lip curled faintly. "Senator?" "Huh." He said it like it was a lie printed on a novelty card. Kamala nodded once. Her patience was thinning, but her composure hadn't cracked. "Yes, sir." "Now, would you please tell me why I was pulled over?" Silence spread between them like oil on water. Slow, wide, impossible to clean. Casey resumed chewing gum with slow, deliberate motion. The cruiser behind him hissed and ticked as the engine cooled in the night air. Finally he spoke. "Step out of the car." The words struck like a wrong note in a familiar song, not loud, but deeply off-key. Kamala blinked. Her mind shifted, fast now, running risk calculations in the background. She tilted her head slightly. "I'm sorry?" Her voice was still calm, but now it carried an edge. Thin steel wrapped in velvet. The officer took a step back, just enough to brace. His right hand hovered over the latch of his gun. The flashlight beam drifted downward. "Step out of the car." The tension in the air became physical, like gravity had suddenly thickened. Kamala had faced public threats, death mail, confrontations in Senate hallways, but this was different. This wasn't political. This was personal. This wasn't about a traffic stop. This was about a man who had found in her calmness a threat, in her title a challenge, in her skin color a defiance he wasn't ready to swallow. "I've complied with every instruction," she said quietly. "I've shown you my ID. There's no cause for this. If there's an issue, I'd like you to call your supervisor." Officer K stiffened, his jaw clenched so tight his temple twitched. "I don't need a supervisor," he snapped, louder now. His gums snapped as well. "I said get out." Kamala didn't move. Not out of defiance, out of experience. She navigated 1,000 negotiations. She knew the difference between yielding power and losing control. Her voice was even, her eyes steady. "On what grounds, officer?" For the first time he hesitated, just for a beat. His lips parted slightly, searching for a justification. But it didn't come. Instead, he stepped closer. The flashlight dropped to his side, and his right hand unlatched the holster. A soft click sounded. But to Kamala, it was thunder. "I don't owe you an explanation," he growled, low and sharp. And in that moment she realized, this wasn't about law. This wasn't about duty. It was about fear, and the dangerous things men do when they confuse fear with power. The air between them thickened, tension crackling like a live wire. The moment teetered on a dangerous edge. Kamala's heart pounded, but her mind remained sharp, slicing through fear with disciplined calculation. She'd read the statistics. She knew the stories that ended in silence and candlelight vigils. Encounters like this could spiral in seconds, from unjust to irreversible. She was no stranger to power, but she also knew how fragile it could be when placed in the hands of someone who didn't understand its limits. "I am well within my rights," Kamala said, her voice low but commanding, slicing through the night like steel. "You are required to state the reason for this stop and for any action you plan to take next." "I'm a sitting U.S. Senator and I am not exiting this vehicle without cause." Officer Case's jaw tightened. His professional mask cracked just slightly, revealing a flicker of something uglier. "I don't care who you are," he spat, his hand now resting fully on the grip of his gun. The flashlight jerked with his movement, casting jagged shadows across the cabin. He leaned in closer, his face distorted by authority unchecked. "You think that badge means anything to me? Get out now, or I'll put you down." The threat didn't come like a shout. It came like a dare. And for the first time Kamala felt the weight of something beyond political danger, not the abstract kind tied to policy or public opinion, but the intimate, devastating kind that involved metal, rage, and silence. Her grip tightened on the wheel, not in fear, but in focus. She had to stay in control. Escalation here could be fatal. "Officer," she said, her tone like iron beneath velvet, "you are making a grave mistake. You're escalating a situation that does not require it. Let's de-escalate. Call your supervisor." But KS let out a short, breathless laugh. "Cold. Cruel." "The mistake," he sneered, "is thinking someone like me can be manipulated by someone like you." And with that he moved. His hand darted for the handle of her door. The click of metal reverberated through her body, not from fear, not yet, but from the realization that this wasn't a traffic stop anymore. Kamala's left hand flew to the inner handle, yanking it back and keeping the door shut. Her voice dropped to a register that had commanded Senate chambers. "Step back." The command landed like a gavel. Cass didn't budge. If anything, his grip tightened, his knuckles paled. "I said out," he growled, voice heavy with entitlement. Kamala's mind raced. She could comply, step out and hope he didn't spiral further, but that would mean surrendering control to someone visibly unhinged. Staying inside meant risking his temper. Either path could lead to violence. She'd seen too many body cam footages, knew the names of too many who did everything right and still didn't make it home. Her Senate ID meant nothing to someone who saw only a threat to their dominance. Her right hand twitched with the impulse to reach for her phone, but any sudden move could be twisted against her in a report that would be rewritten before sunrise. "You're pushing past your boundaries," she said firmly. "You know who I am, you've seen my ID. It's not worth your badge." Kay smirked, a sliver of derision in his eyes. "My badge?" he said. "You think I care about a career? I'm the law out here." That arrogance, that absolute certainty, struck Kamala not with rage but with clarity. She had fought her entire career for justice, for dignity, for communities often silenced or ignored. And she wasn't going to let this man rewrite the rules of power on a quiet road under Louisiana stars. But before she could speak, the tide shifted. A voice, sharp, feminine, cut through the silence. "Hey, I'm recording." Kamala didn't move her head, but her eyes flicked toward the voice. 30 feet away, a young woman stood at the shoulder of the road. Her phone glowed like a lighthouse in the dark. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a witness. And she was live. The reflection of her phone flickered in her glasses, capturing every angle, the officer's hand on the gun. Kamala pinned in her car, the door strained under pressure. "You sure you want to do this, officer?" the woman called, her voice steady despite the tension. KS didn't move his hand, but his posture shifted, a pause, a crack. His head turned slightly, just enough to assess the threat. Not of the woman, but of the camera. Kamala seized the moment. "Put the weapon down," she said, her voice now full, authoritative, and clear, no longer calm but commanding. "You're being recorded. It's already everywhere." Kes grit his teeth. His chest rose and fell sharply. His mind raced behind his narrowing eyes. The woman, whose name Kamala would later learn was Sarah, held her phone steady, unmoving. "I've got the whole thing," Sarah called again. "Every second. The world is watching." Those words landed with the force of a verdict. And for the first time the silence wasn't suffocating. It was the sound of something shifting. Cassius didn't lower the weapon, but his arm wavered. Kamala's heart pounded, but her face was calm, composed, her eyes never left his. Because she knew this wasn't over, not yet. But the balance had shifted. For the first time that night, Kamala Harris felt the faintest flicker of hope, that she might live through this. The roadside, once just a quiet highway shoulder, had become a stage, lit by flashing red and blue lights, headlights glaring like spotlights on a truth too bright to hide. Kamala stood beside her car, hands still raised, not in surrender, but as a deliberate act of restraint, measured and unflinching. The air was electric. The gravel underfoot crunched with every move, the low murmur of the patrol car's engine, the static crackle of a police radio. It all pulsed like a warning before a storm. Officer Kayes hovered a few feet away. The gun was no longer in his hand, but his stance made it clear it was still very much in the picture. His face remained defiant, but his eyes gave him away, wide, restless, uncertain. His authority, once unchecked, now trembled under scrutiny. And Sarah, God bless her, stood firm with her phone aloft, its red recording light blinking like a siren in its own right. That lens wasn't just capturing footage, it was holding Kay accountable. She had become a shield in the form of a bystander, a civilian with courage. But Kamala knew they weren't safe yet. Power doesn't vanish, it shifts. And the tension coiled around Officer Kayes hadn't left. It was just looking for a way to detonate. She saw it in the twitch of his jaw, the way his shoulders stayed stiff, as if still weighing whether he could claw back his dominance. Kamala's mind was sharp. Every detail mattered now. Sarah's position, the angles of the headlights, the growing wail of a second siren. She'd fought on Senate floors, defended justice with language and law. But this was another battlefield. And evidence, not words, would win the night. Casey turned toward Sarah, his lips curling with resentment. "Put that damn phone down," he snapped, the bravado gone, replaced by desperation. His voice cracked. A hairline fracture in the performance of power. Sarah didn't budge. "No chance," she said, voice calm and solid. "You're not in control anymore." The words stung like a slap. His hands jerked toward his waist, instinct, reflex, escalation. Kamala saw it coming. She'd studied the human pulse under pressure, and this man was unraveling. "Officer," she barked, voice slicing through the standoff. "You're being filmed. Every move you make is on record. Think carefully about what you do next." Case glared at her, but he didn't speak. Kamala remained motionless. Her hands were still raised. Her posture was regal, like a woman used to carrying the weight of generations behind her. She was no longer just a senator. She was a witness, a survivor, a symbol. The sirens drew closer, loud now, echoing off the pines. And then, a second patrol car rolled up. Its headlights swept over the scene like a judgment call. The driver's door opened, and another officer stepped out. Officer Blake. Broad-shouldered, tight-lipped, his eyes bounced between Kamala, the camera, and the tense figure of his fellow officer. "What's going on here?" Blake asked, voice low, careful as if stepping onto a minefield. Case didn't answer. He just stared daggers into Kamala, the non-compliant woman who refused to yield. The same words he'd rehearsed for years now fell flat against the evidence unfolding around him. Kamala could hear the setup before it came, the narrative, the spin. Non-compliant driver, suspicious behavior, feared for safety. Words twisted like wires to cage the truth. But not this time. Not with Sarah filming. Not with headlights catching every move. Not with Kamala still standing. Officer Blake looked at Kamala and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. From campaign ads, maybe, or a public service address, or maybe just from seeing someone who carried presence like armor. He said nothing, but in his silence, Kamala found her opening. "Officer Blake," she said, voice level and resolute, reading his nameplate. "I'm Senator Kamala Harris. I was pulled over without cause, threatened with a weapon, and ordered out of my vehicle with no explanation. I complied with every legal instruction, and now I am asking you, do your duty. Arrest Officer K." You see, the words fell like a gavel strike in a courtroom. Blake's jaw twitched. The moment hung still, taut as wire. And Kay's, his composure shattered. "You can't be serious," he barked, stepping toward Kamala again. His hand grazed the gun. But the dynamics had changed. The spotlight was no longer his. All eyes were on him, and the evidence had already spoken. Blake's arm swung out, firm and fast, blocking Kay's just as he began to lunge. "That's enough," Blake muttered. his voice low but heavy with conflict. The words weren't loud, but they rang like a verdict. Sarah cut in, her voice sharp and unflinching. "It's all on video, officers. Guns, threats, everything." She wasn't asking anymore, she was declaring. Blake turned to her, then back at Kay. His eyes shifting, calculating. The scene was collapsing under its own weight. Kamala stood still, calm on the outside, but every muscle inside her on high alert. She knew the camera had changed the stakes, but cornered men with power could still be dangerous. The radio on Blake's shoulder crackled. "Unit 12 status?" He hesitated. His thumb hovered over the button, uncertain. Case began breathing harder, his gaze bouncing wildly between Kamala, Sarah, and the fast-approaching lights of a third cruiser. The tide had shifted, but the danger hadn't passed. Kamala saw the moment for what it was, a breaking point. "Officer Blake," she said, her voice softer now, almost personal but no less resolute. "You have a choice. You can stand beside him and fall with him, or you can do what's right. You know who I am. You know what this is." Blake said nothing, but he slowly dropped his hand from the radio. A small gesture, a massive statement. Casey saw and snapped. "You're seriously buying this?" he growled, stepping forward again. "She's just a politician trying to make headlines." Blake didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Kamala now, searching her face, searching for truth. And then the third cruiser pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, hands near their holsters, scanning the scene. One of them, a lieutenant identifiable by the silver bar on his collar, strode forward. His presence cut through the chaos like a blade. His eyes swept over K-Cass' erratic posture, Sarah's phone, Kamala standing tall with her hands no longer raised but not yet at ease. "Someone want to tell me what's going on here?" the lieutenant asked. His voice was sharp, unwavering. Kamala stepped forward, lowering her hands with deliberate grace. "Lieutenant, I'm Senator Kamala Harris," she said, voice composed, each word steady and weighted with years of practiced clarity. "I was pulled over without cause, threatened at gunpoint, denied identification verification, and ordered out of my car without justification. This citizen," she nodded toward Sarah, "has the entire encounter recorded. I am requesting the immediate arrest of Officer K." The lieutenant's eyes widened, absorbing the full picture. He turned slowly to Case, his expression hardening. "Is that true?" Case's face contorted between defiance and panic. "She wasn't complying," he muttered. She didn't get out of the car." His voice faltered, flimsy and unraveling. Sarah stepped closer, her phone still recording. "You mean after she showed you her Senate ID and identified herself?" she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "You drew a gun on a sitting senator. We all saw it." She tilted the phone slightly. The screen glowed, undeniable, unfiltered proof. The lieutenant's jaw clenched, his gaze snapped to Blake, whose body had gone stiff, posture strained by what he hadn't done. "Cuff him," the lieutenant ordered, nodding at Case. Blake hesitated, a war of loyalty battling inside him, but the command stood. Blake moved, slowly, like his body was no longer his. He pulled out the cuffs. Case's face turned pale. "This is a mistake," Case said, muttered, his voice hollow. "You'll regret this." The metal clicked around his wrists. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked small, caught. Kamala didn't speak. She didn't need to. But the lieutenant wasn't done. He turned to Blake. "Him too?" Blake's eyes widened. "Sir, I didn't." Night. The capital was quiet now. Not in a peaceful way, but in the way cities quiet after a storm. Kamala Harris sat behind her desk, the glow from her reading lamp spilling over a pile of letters. One envelope sat apart from the rest, a simple, folded page inside. The handwriting was uneven, clearly a child's. "Dear Senator Harris, my dad told me you got pulled over and almost shot. That was scary. My mom said you're brave. I want to be brave too. What should I do? Rom Elijah." She read it 3 times. not because she didn't understand it, but because she felt the weight of every word. It wasn't a question, really. It was a cry for direction, for permission to believe that good still mattered in a world that often didn't feel safe. Kamala didn't answer it that night. She just sat there, watching the reflection of city lights ripple across her office window, and whispered to herself, "We owe them better." In Ted, Baton Rouge Community Center, 2 weeks later evening. The building was modest. Brick walls, faded posters taped to bulletin boards, chairs that creaked when you sat, but the room was full, brimming with people. Some were quiet, some came angry, but they were all present, which mattered more than anything. Kamala walked in with no press behind her, no cameras, just a clipboard and a folder tucked beneath her arm. Sarah stood by the door, nodding gently as their eyes met, a silent pact. This wasn't about what had happened anymore. This was about what came next. Community Center later. Kamala stood behind the podium, no speech, no script. "I'm here," she said simply, "because that night should have never happened, not to me, not to anyone." She paused. "I was lucky. I had a title, I had a witness, I had a camera. But most people don't. Most people walk away with fear. Or they don't walk away at all." A mother raised her hand. She told a story about her teenage son, how a traffic stop left him shaken, unable to sleep for weeks. Another woman stood up and spoke about her father, a veteran, who was mistaken for a trespasser outside his own home. The stories came like a tide, truth after truth, painful and unapologetic. Kamala didn't interrupt. She didn't comfort with platitudes. She just listened, like she had promised she would. 19. Senate Chamber Daily Weather Day. Days later. The floor was tense, cameras pointed, lawmakers whispered. Kamala stood at her desk, eyes steady. "I am not here to condemn every officer," she said, "but I am here to ask, who holds power accountable when power fails?" She outlined her proposal. National standards for law enforcement accountability, required body cams, civilian review boards, federal oversight where state systems failed. It wasn't radical. It was necessary. Some senators shifted in their seats, others folded their arms, but Kamala didn't flinch. "Justice," she continued, "should not depend on whether someone is watching. It should be the default, not the exception." Elementary school classroom. Louisiana. Day. Weeks later, Sarah was invited to speak to a 5th grade civics class. She was nervous. She stood at the front, hands tucked into her jacket pockets. A little boy in the back raised his hand. "Did you know she was a senator when you helped her?" he asked. Sarah smiled. "No, I just saw someone who needed help." "Weren't you scared?" She paused. "Yes. But courage doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are." The teacher nodded, moved. The kids clapped. AMAS office, morning. Elijah's letter was still there. Kamala finally wrote back. "Dear Elijah, you asked how to be brave. Start by standing up when it matters most. Stand up for your friends. Stand up for the truth. And never think you're too small to make a difference. Because courage doesn't start in the Capitol. It starts with people like you. Keep asking questions. Keep showing up. Senator Kamala Harris." Int. Check basement. Community Roundtable. Level evening. Kamala met with retired officers, civil rights lawyers, and grieving families. A father spoke about losing his daughter during a no-knock raid. A former sergeant admitted he'd once looked away when his partner used force that wasn't necessary. "I was silent," he said. "I thought I was protecting the badge. But silence doesn't protect. It corrodes." Kamala reached across the table, her voice steady. "Then help us fix it. Help me build something better." He nodded, tears quietly forming. NT, U.S. Capitol, Press Room Day. The Justice and Dignity Act passed committee review? Not easily, not without resistance. But it passed. Kamala stepped into the press room, Sarah by her side, holding a copy of the legislation. She didn't boast. She didn't gloat. "We're not finished," she said into the microphones. "We're just getting started." N.T. Kamal's office, late night. The desk was full again. Letters, emails, testimonies, not just from Louisiana now, but from across the country. People wanted to be heard. Kamala took a deep breath and leaned back in her chair, fingers interlaced under her chin. She wasn't tired. She was ready. Montage across America, various locations. A young black girl records a police encounter from a bus window. A Hispanic father testifies before his city council about unjust profiling. A white teacher volunteers to host a Know Your Rights seminar. An officer removes his badge and speaks on camera, saying, "We need to change how we serve." Each image builds, one after another, no music, just the rising sound of voices united. Fine. Elementary classroom, day. Elijah's letter is now framed behind Kamala's desk. He visits the Capitol with his class on a field trip. Kamala greets them in the rotunda. He stares up at her in awe. "Did you really write me back?" Kamala smiles. "I did, and I meant every word." Community Center, evening. Recurrent levels of executive stress. A banner reads, "Justice is a daily choice, Baton Rouge Civic Panel." Kamala takes the podium once more. Her voice echoes not just through the room, but through history. We live in a time where the loudest voices are not always the right ones, but truth doesn't need volume, it needs conviction, and it needs you. A pause. Then she adds, softly but firmly, "None of us can fix everything, but each of us can fix something, and if we each do that, we change the world." Final scene, N.T. Kamala's office, night. The city glows beyond the windows. Kamala sits in her chair, pen in hand. Her eyes drift to the flash drive Sarah gave her. She opens her laptop, inserts the drive. The screen flickers. The video plays, the grainy footage of that fateful night. But she doesn't watch it to relive the fear. She watches it to remember what it gave birth to. Not a scandal, not a political fight, but a movement, a new beginning. Narration: Kamala V.O. Justice doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to the willing, but to the ones who speak up when no one else does. To those who hold the line when it would be easier to walk away. If you're waiting for someone to give you permission to care, don't. The moment is already here. This country doesn't move forward on silence. It moves on courage. And courage lives in you. Justice is not a moment, it's a movement.